maybe just me and guitar humming until it looks like people are paying attention, and then I'll look at you and then we'll start. And then you can just start recording. But whatever happens will happen and it'll be okay. Be the,
Good morning. Welcome to the service of worship at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tucson. My name is Watercolor Golightly, and I will be your worship associate or tour guide on this mission. If you have attended church this summer, you are probably aware of the wonderful speaker series that we've had. And while our seated Reverend Bethany, was off on her summer adventures, we had Pastor Jamili Omar and our wonderful worship team in charge of some great services. But it is September, and Reverend Bethany is back. We are thrilled to have Reverend Bethany Russell back in the pulpit for the second Sunday in a row now. Welcome back. We no longer require masks here for worship or in concurrent religious education. You are, of course, always welcome to wear a mask here. But it is no longer required. Also, there have been cases of COVID among our members in the congregation. If you're feeling sick, we invite you to join us online for this week and return when you are feeling better. Based on the most recent poll, UUs in this church are committed to being fully vaccinated, and for the sake of the most vulnerable in our congregation, we encourage you to keep it up. Let's maintain our commitments. I'd like to extend a special welcome to our visitors today. Do we have any visitors if you want to be recognized? Welcome, welcome. We invite you to fill out a guest information card. They're located over in the Welcome Center. If you're joining online, Those of you that are new can go ahead and just pop into the chat, and we'll give you information to get more information. Good morning. If you need to use the bathrooms and you're not familiar with this place, the bathrooms over in Holland are still open, and through that door and to the left, there are also 2 bathrooms. We will meet for social hour after the service today, right here in Goddard. There'll be coffee, iced tea, lemonade, a couple snacks, and we invite everyone to stay and enjoy the company. And those that are able-bodied that want to help us put some more chairs out, oh, looks like those are good. I think we're good, guys. We got half of, yeah? I think we have enough chairs and tables today, so we won't need extra help. As we prepare to enter the sacred place of worship today, let us remember that our community strives to become as varied as the blooms of the Sonoran Desert, so that we may better reflect the wonderful diversity here in southern Arizona. However you participate in this service, whether here in person or online at home, we welcome you, whomever you love, and however you identify your gender, and however you choose to express it. You are welcome. We welcome you. Whoever you are and whoever you have been and whoever you are becoming, we invite you to bring your whole self here now. We have lots of announcements this morning. If you saw on the screen, an additional announcement that we were requested to add is that the quilters are meeting every Wednesday from 2 to 4 in Severtus room at UUCT. And all are welcome to bring their projects. And if you've never quilted before, you're still welcome to come and learn. Also, we have this wonderful mystery quilt that we think came from the 1980s. And if anybody has information about that, we'd love to hear more, because we don't know. We just know that our children worked on it in the 1980s, probably. Thank you.
Just lovely, Danielle. I was humming along, and maybe some of you were too, when I knew the tune. This morning, we are exploring equity in community. But first, I want to get one thing straight. Equity is not equality, right? Equity and equality have a lot of the same letters, but they are not the same thing. For a long time, many people have asked for equality, but Unitarian Universalists pursue the value of equity. To try to show the difference, I'm going to show you a series of pictures. These might be familiar to some of you who have a Facebook page and see memes. And I'm going to ask Jody to give a visual description of the pictures so that we all can understand what the pictures look like. So, AV team, can we get that first slide up?
Okay. Hello? No, yes. No, 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 no. Mic one.
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 Mic one up.
Up, please. No.
I see them on it.
Okay.
There
Here
you
we
are.
go.
Yep,
Oh, okay. Well, we have pictures. We have a picture of 3 people. And they're all standing on boxes that are the same height, but they are sadly not the same height. So 2 people can see the lovely band, and this poor third person looks at the fence.
Yes. Yep. The next one. And it says equality under it.
Yay! And now, all 3 people can see the lovely band because they now have boxes that enable them to see. So one person has 1 box, the next person has 2, and the little person, the shorter person, which I understand, now has 3, and they can all see.
Right, so equality is everyone gets 1 box. Everybody gets a box, but 1 box. Equity is giving more boxes if someone needs more boxes. Okay, next one. Jody.
Okay, next one. Same 3 people, except now we're standing on a hill, no boxes, and the fence is tipped. The poor short person, yet again, cannot see.
Right, and that person in the middle can barely see because of the tilt of the earth they're
Yes.
standing on, right?
Yes.
Okay, next. That's equality.
And now, more people get boxes. The one person that didn't need the box doesn't get them. The other person got 1, and the shorter person got 2. So now everyone can see.
So equality is no one needs a box. A box isn't actually a box, right? No one needs a box. Equity is giving boxes if someone says they need a box, right? Okay, and equity is just the beginning. Let's go through 2 more pictures, Jody.
Okay.
This is labeled, when we get to it.
Justice. And there's no fence. So they're trying to build something.
I would interpret as justice is actually tearing down the fence.
That could be too.
Maybe they've disassembled this fence.
This is true.
Let's see the next one and see if that's what was happening, or they were building something else.
Ah, yes, they did. They took down the fence. They took down the barriers, and now everyone can see.
And that is labeled liberation. So justice, I think, is tearing down, disassembling that fence. Liberation is a world where, why do we actually need that fence anyways? The road to justice and liberation is one that requires a shift towards equity, not equality. Come, let us learn more together. And will you please join me now in our chalice lighting words as watercolor lights our chalice from Reverend Cynthia Landrum. As we kindle this flame, you can join me. May it spark in each of us connection and commitment to this living tradition and to each other. And now, if you're joining us online, if you have a chalice or candle nearby, I invite you to light it with us now.
And would you, as you are able, rise in body or spirit and sing "When Our Heart Is in a Holy Place." in a holy place. We are blessed with love and amazing grace when our heart is in a holy place. When we share the silence of sacred space and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy
The Giving Tree of the Desert, written by Danielle Fredette. To those who give so others can grow. Once there was a Palo Verde tree, and he loved a little saguaro. Since she was a tiny black seed snuggled up close under his branches, he watched over her, protecting her from hungry insects who loved to nibble on seeds. And when the monsoon rains came, his sturdy roots protected her from the fast-moving water. They spent their days together, watching the life of the desert around them. The saguaro loved the Palo Verde, and the Palo Verde was happy. Time went by, and the saguaro grew in its own slow way. The Palo Verde grew older too, but he was still able to protect her. When it was too hot under the desert sun, he kept her cool. When it was too cold during the winter nights, he kept her warm. When hikers came wearing their big boots, his vast branches protected her from their crushing steps. When pocket mice came to feast, he protected her from their hungry bellies. Time went by, and the saguaro grew taller, her roots spread further, and the Palo Verde grew older too. One day, while passing time under the bright, shining sun, the saguaro said to the Palo Verde, "It is too hot. The sun is so strong. I wish I had some shade." The Palo Verde sighed. "You have grown so tall, I am not able to shade you from the desert sun like I once did. But here, take my water. Let it cool you and fill you up." So the saguaro did, and she swelled with happiness and water in the dry desert heat. The Palo Verde was happy too. One day, she said to the Palo Verde, "I am just so hungry. Growing tall is hard work." The Palo Verde said to the saguaro, "Here, take the nutrients from the soil. I'm not growing tall. Take it and you will be strong." So the saguaro did, and she grew taller. The Palo Verde was happy. Time went by. The saguaro began to grow arms. The Palo Verde grew even older. Now, when hikers came wearing their big boots, they took pictures of her proud arms reaching towards the sun and the flowers on her crown. Now, when a curious javelina came poking around her, her sharp spines scared it away. Now, when the monsoon storms came roaring in, her roots held strong onto the earth. "You don't need my protection anymore," said the old Palo Verde. "But I do need your company," said the saguaro. The Palo Verde was happy. Time went by, and the saguaro's arms grew heavy. The Palo Verde was so very, very old. "My arms have grown too heavy to hold. I fear I might fall over," said the saguaro. "My dear," said the ancient Palo Verde, "rest your arms on my limbs and I will hold you up." So she did. The saguaro was happy, and so was the Palo Verde. The end. Or is it?
Our earth is strong. It can hold our pain, our joy, our love, our anger, and our shared bowl, which we use for joys and sorrows, each week is strong enough to hold the big rocks, our collective celebrations and mournings, and also the smaller stones that will be added to signify our individual joys and sorrows. Let us remember the desert people who came to this place first. We honor the Ho'okam, the Yavapai, the Tohono O'odham, the Yakai, the Yaqui, and the people who no longer exist as tribal entities here in Arizona. We who live in the desert know that water is life. Water is a life-sustaining and scarce resource. Let's remember those who are walking through our desert right now without access to water. We pour water from a plastic jug similar to the ones used by our partners. Similar to the ones used by those seeking to assure greater access to water in the desert, like our ministry partners, No More Deaths. If you have a joy or sorrow today, I invite you to go to menti.com and put in the code you see on the screen today. Those of you here in Holland that would like some help doing that can go ahead and see Brian over there. He has his device ready and able to put in your comments to be shared. And for everyone here in person, I invite you to come up to the table and create ripples of hope by putting in a stone for your joy or sorrow or both. To best utilize the space, we ask that everyone go to the center row and create one line for this space that we have here. And that will utilize the aisles most effectively.
Try three.
One.
Oh, there we go.
It was on the first time. Weird. All right, here we go. From menti.com, we have learning to say no instead of maybe. It isn't easy. I'm with you on that. You can do it. Joys for all the amazing and free buses all across Tucson. Getting to where you need to go. Good job. So grateful for you all, my extended family. We are all grateful for you too. Our words of prayer and meditation today in contemplation come from Reverend Vanessa Rush Southern. She writes, "So much undone, so much to do, so much to heal in us and the world, so much to acquire: a meal, a healthy body, a fit one, a lover, a job, a better job, proof we are enough, just around the corner of now. And up against it, the reality of all that falls short, the limits of today. We honor the limits. If your body won't do what it used to for right now, let it be enough. If your mind won't stop racing or can't think of the word, let it be enough. If you are here utterly alone and in despair, be all that here with us. If today you cannot sing because your throat hurts or you don't have the heart for the music, be silent. When the offering plate goes around, if you don't have money to give or the heart to give it, let it pass. The world won't stop spinning on her axis if you don't rise to all occasions today. Love won't cease to flow in your direction. Your heart won't stop beating. All hope won't be lost. You are part of this world's salvation. Of that I have no doubt. The world needs its oceans of people striving to be good, to carry us to the shores of hope, wash fear from the beachheads, and cleanse all wounds so they can heal. But oceans are big, and I am sure there are parts that don't feel up to the task of the whole some days. Rest, if you must, then like the swimmer lying on her back who floats, or the hawk carried by the cushion of air. Rest in the pews made to hold the weary lives in space carved out for doing nothing much but being. Perhaps then you will feel in your bones, in your weary heart, the aching, healing sense that this is enough. Even this is enough. That we are enough. You are enough. Enough. For these and all meditations of our hearts unspoken in this hour, I say, Amen.
Winds be still. Please join. Raise your voices in song. Because of the high note, please stand. Winds be still, storm clouds pass and a silence come. Peace grace this time with harmony. Fly, bird of hope, and shine, lights of love, and in calm let all find tranquility. Birds we may join our songs in new sounds that become full symphony.
You sound delightful. This past spring in Hardwick, a small town in central Vermont, there was a play. A murder mystery, to be exact. The play was based on that small town of Hardwick and set in their town meeting format. In the middle of the town meeting, to discuss a potential development in town, someone is murdered. People from all over Hardwick auditioned. They thought ticket sales would be slow. They weren't sure if this would be a good idea. Even as the audition process moved forward, all of the actors were really amateur. Some of them had never been in a play before. They were taking this risk on an idea. But it worked. In a town of just over 1,000 people, they sold out 4 77-seat performances in no time. And it was a hit. Not just because people enjoyed it, but because the play brought together all the people of Hardwick. The hippies and the townies, the people whose great-grandparents had worked in the mills of Hardwick, and the people who moved there from New Jersey 2 years ago, dairy farmers, and people from the local puppeteering group. If you know Vermont, you know the one. The play took place in the town Legion Hall. It was the first time some people had been to that Legion Hall, and they admitted that they hesitated to come. The play took place over a meal. The people who gathered broke bread together. They ate together. All of the dietary needs were accommodated, even the vegans, and even those who needed gluten-free options. Everyone ate spaghetti and salad and brownies. Those were a hit. The first night, they put the brownies on individual plates. And then one of the organizers, one of the directors of the play said, "No, let's put them on platters." So the attendees turned to each other and shared smiles and short words, interacting, if even subtly. In a space where there was great potential for divisiveness, the play brought everyone together, in part because the organizers, the directors, imagined everyone being there right from the beginning. This was not a play just for the vegans, or just for the farmers, or just for the townies. It was for everyone, so everyone came.
What will you take from this place today? Will it be the message, the music, the inspirational words? And can you leave a symbolic part of yourself? An offering of the willing will be accepted with love and reverence. Now an offering will be collected to support the life and work of our congregation. If you're joining us on the live stream, you can send a check to the office, give online at uutucson.org/donate, text 833-361-5796. If you are here in person, the ushers will come around now with an offering basket to collect your donations. Thank you.
This past summer, in Hardwick, a small town in Vermont, there was a flood. Many feet of water made businesses unusable, homes uninhabitable, streets unusable. Some buildings just slipped away. Soon after the flood, days after, the Civic Standard, the organization that had put on that play, began organizing flood response events. For the other flood response events that had been organized, the anarchists had refused to show up to anything run by the state, and the farmers had refused to show up to anything run by progressives, but everyone showed up at the Civic Standard events. They were held at the Legion Hall, where the play had been. Someone just brought bagels, so they ate together. And then they went to the different houses and businesses and tore up drywall and floors, helped people find valuable items. And after a few hours of that, they came back to the Legion Hall for lunch. It was in part because they had practiced in that exact same place that they were able to gather this way. They used a similar format, the same table setup, the same food to convene those emergency gatherings as they had used for the play. They even had brownies. They had already considered how to make this space, this event, accessible to everybody in town with many abilities, people from all walks of life, people of many dietary restrictions. In between those heartbreaking work days, the Civic Standard hosted karaoke, bluegrass jams, trivia nights, and more. The organizers of the Civic Standard put it this way: being together, responding to each other, knowing each other is all practice. But this indicates that a weather emergency is what we're practicing for, they said, which is not true, because actually, it's all practice for more of the same. As I listened to this podcast this summer and then the post-flood follow-up that happened in late July, I thought to myself, this is a model for church and community in the 21st century. Not the play necessarily, and not the flood necessarily, but the practicing for the natural disaster, or for that big community conflict, or for the health crisis, or for the life transition. We gather to practice supporting each other while the desert gets hotter and hotter and hotter. We gather to practice conflict transformation for that time when that big conflict comes and we need some help. We gather to practice being the friend we want to be when our fellow church members has that health crisis, that big life transition. We gather to practice being community for the time when community is needed most. How are we doing in our practicing for climate chaos? How are we doing in our practicing for community conflict? How are we doing in our practicing for supporting each other through those big, scary transitions in our lives? As with those two stories of the Civic Standard, the play and the flood response, it matters only not that we gather to practice, but also how we gather to practice. When the play was held, the organizers made a great effort to make sure that event was accessible to everybody, no matter how they move or what they could eat or whether or not they could pay. This is equity in action. Imagining who could possibly join, who would want to see this play, and building those accommodations for people with those identities into the structure of the event. The play directors didn't wait for someone to ask for a gluten-free vegan meal. They assumed someone would need that. They didn't wait for somebody to point out that the stairs made the venue inaccessible. They found a venue without stairs. If we are wanting to become a people who welcome all, we need to start by assuming that all might want to join us, which means imagining all of the different people who we could be and building access for those people into church. Have you ever offered to describe the pictures and videos shown in worship to someone who has visual impairments? Jody modeled that for us this morning, right? Have you considered how someone in a wheelchair or scooter might get to your meeting space? Have you started a list of really good vegan, gluten-free, peanut, dairy-free recipes to bring to potlucks? Creating equitable spaces doesn't always mean building that ramp that costs thousands of dollars. Not to say I'm not in support, I'm saying it doesn't always mean that. It doesn't mean taking something away from your event or not having the lasagna that is your potluck staple and you're proud of it. It means growing that flexibility to build events that have many options, not just the ones we are comfortable with. And creating equitable spaces also means making more space for people whose identities have been marginalized. It means shifting power away from those who have usually held that power and towards those who've been historically denied power. I'll name a really tangible example of this power shift in equity. A few years ago, my professional organization, the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association, started using stacked order speaking at our gatherings. Anybody familiar with this? Stacked order? Oh, it's cool. Stacked order speaking means that rather than letting whoever gets to the microphone go first, we actually let people who have one or more marginalized identities to the front of the line to speak questions first when there's a question or comment period. When we started doing this, a few interesting things started happening when we started letting people with one or more marginalized identities speak first. There were more comments and questions about how we can become the people we want to become. More missional questions, I'd call those. Issues we don't usually talk about in large groups were voiced out loud, and all of a sudden we are talking about those things. There are more questions for presenters, and this was really interesting. There were more questions for presenters and leaders about how their spirits were and how we could support each other as colleagues in this UU Ministers Association. And some of you who've been in meetings will find this funny. There were many, many fewer, if any. This is more of a comment than a question in the space. That just wasn't something we really said anymore, right? Now I know I can see that some of you are squirming right now because you hear yourself in this story and then you know you might be at the back of the stack in that practice. And you're right. If some of you are part of this community, your question might not get asked that day. And it is also true that for too long, too many people have not been able to ask their questions in that space, whether due to their comfort level or their ability to take that risk that day. The ultimate goal of equity is not to take away anybody's ability to ask questions, but it is to shift power, to observe how that shift changes us, and then to find this balance that moves us all towards inclusion. In the example of the Ministers Association, at first it was rare for us to get to the point in the stack when a self-identified cisgender heterosexual white man spoke for like 2.5 years. But this summer, something happened. I don't know whether it was good or bad. I don't know exactly what happened, but the stacks got smaller this summer. We got to the point where everyone who wanted to speak got to speak. But the types of questions we asked stayed the same. I didn't hear, this is more of a comment than a question once this summer. The people who chose to speak continued to ask deep, powerful, essential questions and give comments when asked for. By shifting power for a little while, we learned a new way of being together, and we shared that way of being going forward. I have another example of equity shift, perhaps one that a few of you are more familiar with. Has anyone seen the Barbie movie? Yeah? Yeah, Barbie's great. Okay, if you haven't, you should. I promise it is worth 2 hours of your time. Your minister has charged you to see the Barbie movie. I'll try not to give any big spoilers because I know you're all gonna see it now. The movie starts in Barbie Land, which is pink, as you'd expect, and perfect, it seems. And there are two types of people in Barbie Land. Can you guess? Barbie and Ken. There are Barbies and Ken. All the people who appear female are Barbie, and all the people who appear male are Ken. And there's some bending of gender, but that's not as well done in this movie as I would have liked it, to be honest. Barbie and Kens are the two people who live in Barbie Land. The Barbies, it appears, are the only ones who own houses or drive cars. A Barbie is president. The Supreme Court is all Barbies. Barbies are doctors and astronauts and lawyers and mermaids, too. There are Kens, too, but they don't have jobs. We aren't actually really sure what they do. Early on in the movie, they joke that what they do is beach. We actually don't know where they sleep, where they live. They don't own these houses. Every Ken has a Barbie, but their relationship is platonic at best. Barbie Land is playing with this 1960s and in some places still current stereotype of gender in the United States, but flipping the tables and giving the Barbies all the power and leaving the Kens dependent on whoever their Barbie is. Barbie Land at first is not equitable. Barbie Land is patriarchy, but in reverse. There's less violence, I think, built into the matriarchy of Barbie Land, but the Kens still don't have identities apart from their Barbies. Not everyone is fully free and full of dignity in Barbie Land. You'll have to see the movie to see how they address this reality. And if you see it and the movie feels really UU to you, know that the director, Greta Gerwig, was raised Unitarian Universalist, which is pretty cool. Not currently, I don't believe, but was raised in one of our congregations. I mentioned Barbie Land to say that equity is not about switching one dominant power structure for another. It is about shifting power towards those who have historically less power, learning from the impacts of that shift, and seeking a balance of power where everyone is honored and valued and can feel full of dignity. This year, our Unitarian Universalist congregations are being asked to study a newly voted upon Article 2, which we'll vote on again next year at General Assembly, a new set of values to bring Unitarian Universalists and our congregations into covenant with each other. And equity is one of the values we're being asked to consider. The Article 2 draft we accepted says this about equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent worth, dignity, and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. So I'm turning it over to you for a moment. Considering all you've heard today, I'm going to invite you to turn to your neighbor in a minute, maybe a neighbor or two, and name one way that we could start practicing equity in community, either here at UUCT or in another community you're part of if this one doesn't feel quite like yours yet. And when we're ready to come back together, Brian and Danielle will start leading us in song. So turn to a neighbor and talk about the things we could do to start practicing equity in community.
da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. Olam hesed ibanei, ba-da-da, da-da-da, da-da. Olam hesed ibanei, da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da. Olam hesed ibanei, da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da. I will build this world with love. Ba-da-da, da-da-da, da-da. You will build this world with love. Da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da. 'Cause if we build this world from love, ba-da-da, da-da-da, da-da, then God will build this world from love, ba-da-da, da-da-da. Please stand as you can. Olam hesed ibanei, da-da-da, da-da-da, da. Olam hesed ibanei, da-da-da, da-da-da, da. Olam hesed ibanei. I will build this world from love. Da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da. You must build this world from love. Da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da. And if we build this world from love, da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da. Then God must build this world from love. Da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da.
Now I invite you to join me in saying our words for closing by Reverend Amy Zucker Morgenstern, as we extinguish our chalice today. When we take from our chalice, it does not become less, it becomes more. And so we extinguish our chalice, but we take the light and warmth with us, multiplying their power by all of our lives and sharing it with the world.